one of the critiques of this film, and one of my critiques when I first saw it, is that beginning is so long. Cut out the first 45 minutes. Let's just get to the space station. But on this watching of it, I fully realize if you take out that first 45 minutes, if you take even a minute out of this movie, it hurts the rest of the movie because you need all of that buildup for those moments that you see later on to have meaning. How do you know he misses Earth? Like, how do you know Solaris looks cold? Unless you see the beauty and the greenery of Earth before you go to this cold, desolate, disheveled space station. Like, you need that contrast, you need that time spent with him being human and being
Yeah.
flawed before you get into this deep philosophy that happens early on in the film. So, as slow paced and as long as the movie is, and any critiques that I had coming into this, or that the critiques that are online or that people may have when they see the runtime or they hear about this film, I think they are misguided critiques. And I think this movie needs everything you see on screen to make it as special as it is. You cut out the first 45 minutes, this movie isn't as good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you kind of need that. In a way, it's setting up everything that you need to know in the first 45 minutes. But you don't know it at the time. You don't know it's setting all these things up that are going to be important later. So yeah, it's definitely necessary. Interestingly, I think that the book only starts with him arriving on the space station. So that was more Tarkovsky's addition to the story. The original novel, I think, just starts with him getting to the space station. So it's an
I think
interesting
it was
difference.
a Polish author, Stanisław Lem.
Hmm.
Stanislaw Lem. He did not like the interpretation of the book. And this happens. Sometimes there's an interpretation and the author loves it, supports it, and sometimes he hates it. We talked about a film on this show, The Shining, where you had a great author in Stephen King and a great filmmaker in Stanley Kubrick, and they just completely clashed in the interpretation. And this Lem seems to be a really good author. I mean, from
Hmm.
all indications, the book is great. And Tarkovsky obviously is a great filmmaker, and you have a similar clash where you have two incredibly talented people in two different forms of media, and they clash on the interpretation of a great story that's told brilliantly in two different ways.
Yeah, it sounds like they were kind of almost working together, or at least keeping in contact as the screenplay was being written, and Lem was being consulted about it. But then when he saw the finished, I think the first draft of the screenplay, three-quarters of it took place on Earth, which he was extremely unhappy about. So obviously they didn't quite keep that, but yeah, it's interesting that he had kind of been involved in it, he'd been consulted, but Tarkovsky definitely had ideas that he wanted to explore, and that involved showing life on Earth.
Yeah, I believe Lem called it, he said, "This isn't my book, this is Crime and Punishment." So I think he
Yeah,
wasn't as he did. I think he didn't want the focus to be too much on the characters and the guilt of this, the suicide, and yeah, I think he wanted more to be focused on Solaris, the ocean, the planet, and like you said, the space station. Uh,
yeah.
the
I don't.
ocean isn't really that big a part of the story. I mean, it is there, but it's definitely more in the backdrop. It's not like, what you would think of. Maybe the ocean is maybe the antagonist, it's like a nature horror, like some kind of, we have to fight this entity. It's not really a character that much in the film at all.
No, it's kind of the great unknown, and I think it's kind of in a way we don't know. Is it the antagonist or is it just being what it is? Is it just trying to communicate? And I think that's something that Lem was interested in, was the idea of human beings trying to communicate with alien life forms. Like, how is that even possible? Because the alien life form may not even resemble what we think of as a person. It might be an ocean, it's a body of water. Like, how do you communicate with that? It's like a very different thing. So I think he was obsessed with that kind of idea, the failure of communication between human beings and other alien races. So it's definitely here, but I think Tarkovsky brought a bunch of other things to it as well.
Yeah, I think that's why he made it an ocean as well, because he didn't want it to have any human characteristics.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think this story would have been interesting if you focused on it, because it's an interesting concept, which I guess why it's a great book. But I also think that the movie is great itself, so I don't
Yes.
see any fault in either direction.
No, no, I don't either.